Hello, this is Amy from Rain Studios, and I am going to show you the proper way to open a jump ring. Open and close a jump ring, I should say. I like to use a pair of chain nose pliers and a pair of bent chain nose pliers. It's got this little bend in the tips. The way I like to do it, I'm going to show it on this big ring first, is I like to put my pliers at about 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock, like that. And as you can see, I try and get as much in this. This is my offhand. I'm right-handed. In my offhand, I try to put as much of that ring in there as possible. And then I do most of my bending with my right hand. One thing we never want to do is to pull this ring apart like this. If a ring is pulled apart like that, it will never go back into the round shape that we like. So, since we can't do it that way, what we do is we swing it open like this, like you're opening a door. And about 30 degrees is usually plenty. For a ring this big, it's probably overkill. Once you've got it open, what you want to do is as you pull it back towards you, you want to actually push the ends of that ring together as much as possible. I'm going to try and get right up in here if it will focus. So as you can see, this ring is actually touching, and then as I get there, I pull it apart just barely enough to let it squeeze through. And then it might need just a few little adjustments like this to get that ring closed perfectly so that the sides completely lined up. Okay, now what I was doing when I was pulling that, when I opened it, I'm actually kind of pushing it, even though they're separating, I'm trying to push those two ends together as I pull them apart. So that way when I pull them back together, they're actually going to hit. And what that does is that it creates kind of a memory in the bottom of this ring. It remembers, hey, I was really close to each other up here. So then when I pull them back and let them slip apart and meet, now instead of having a gap there, the ends, the closure in that ring, those two ends are actually almost pushing against each other. And that's a great way to make sure you have really good closures. A good way to make sure you have a good closure is to take this ring and hold it up to the light. If you see any light shining through that closure, it's not closed tightly enough. It should always be closed as tight and flush as you can get it. So I'm just going to do some practice rings with a couple of different sizes. This is a really big ring. This is a 14 gauge. I think it's 11 diameter. You hear that click? I hope it comes through in the video. That's a good click because it means that that ring is touching. It's a really touching ring, which is what we want. We want it to be closed nice, tight, and flush. There we go. Focus. There we go. Next, let's try this little ring. A very fat ring. It's a 12 gauge ring. And it's in copper, so this is a little bit of a mushier metal. It's much softer. The click is not as pronounced as with a harder metal. Again, though, even though it's smaller, we want to get it solidly in our pliers. And I'm really holding these pliers tight. If you find your ring is slipping around in your pliers, that means you need to grip them harder. So grip them really tight, open and close. There we go. And that is closed nice and tight. Another thing is when you hold your ring in your pliers, notice how the ends of that ring is definitely clear of my pliers. If I cover up the end of my ring, the closure with my pliers, there's no way that those two ends can meet tight and flush. So I want to make sure there's plenty of space for that end of the ring out of my pliers. And then I close it up tight like that. Okay. I've got one more 12 gauge ring. These are tough. There it goes. Sorry about that. I watch the rings instead of the camera and I don't even notice when it goes out of the frame. Let's try that again. I open it, making sure my pliers are well back from the closure. There we go. I like to just feel that it's nice and closed tight. All right, those are all really big rings or fat rings. Now here's a ring that is a 20 gauge ring with a 12 millimeter diameter. So this is a very light, it's almost a flimsy ring. I could probably do it with my fingers. Same thing. I want to just overlap that ring. Let's try and get this thing to focus. There we go. I'm going to overlap that ring until it's going to just almost push together, just like that. This is a good size to use for like a wine charm or a stitch marker. This is a great stitch marker size. So that is good. Let's do one more of those. Focus. There's my opening. Just gonna overlap it and bring it back like that. Little adjustments to make sure that meets up. There it goes. And that is the proper way to open and close a jump ring. Please leave me any questions or comments. And thank you for watching.